Once again, welcome to our Educator Spotlight series. And today's guest is Becky Arbic with the Sioux, I have high school in there twice, Sioux Area High School and Career Center. And her email address is up there for you. It's barbic@eupschools.org. And with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and I am going to let you see her face big and full screen. And welcome, Becky.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here. This is great.
And we've already got, and Ron's on here. He is. So Ron says, hi, Becky. Glad to have you here. So now you get a chance to hear him if he gets to talk later. I asked Ron if you'd actually met face to face, and she said, no, you guys have only been able to talk on the phone. But
yeah, this is great.
Yeah. So why don't we start off by this? Why don't you just quickly tell us a little bit about yourself? You're obviously in the UP, so that alone sets you apart from most of the rest of us. But tell us a little bit about like where you teach, how long you've been teaching, what subject you teach, and just give us a little background.
Yeah, okay, so the Sioux is about 45 minutes over the bridge, straight up, we're right next door to Canada, just right across the river, and I teach high school math, and I didn't ever intend to do this. I hated math in school, and one thing leads to another. That's a whole nother long story, but here I am, a high school math teacher teaching in the Sioux, and just some of the trainings that I've been able to go to sent me down kind of a STEM road, hands-on stuff in the classroom. And then I was able to go to a geometry and construction training. And it was like, holy smokes, like I drank the Kool-Aid, like this is the best thing ever. And it fits for me because I don't know, I thought maybe I'd be a science teacher or a hippie when I grew up. And it's just, everything is fun and new and it's not boring. I mean, we have a blast every day and like, I'm not going to do my job if I'm not having fun. And I've been at this for 20 years. This is our 6th year of geometry and construction. And I love it. Every day is fun and my students love it. You know, we have a good time together. It's kind of like our secret club, except it's not a secret.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So you mentioned geometry and construction a couple of times. And if you've ever come to one of my teachers in industry back in the day when we were actually meeting face to face, I had gone to a conference and heard a little bit about it, and I also was sucked in. I'm not a math teacher by trade. I'm a language arts and PE teacher. But when I heard this, I was like, this makes sense. And in my role, and part of the reason why we do these series is I want to highlight and focus on teachers where, by the way, there's a ton of teachers who are doing innovative and cool things. Our guest for our next session, she was like, oh, I'm not doing anything special. That's what she was hesitant to do it because she says, I'm not doing anything special, but I would disagree. There's a lot of teachers who are doing cool things because I've talked to a lot of other teachers, and let's just face it, there are teachers who still hand out worksheets, or math teachers who, here's your 10 math problems, they talk about it, and now you have the rest of the hour to do your math problems. And there's a lot more ways to have both rigorous but also relevant teaching. So I went to this thing about construction, geometry and construction. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What is the premise of it and how does it work?
All right, so geometry and construction is generally set up as a 2-hour block class in the high school. We have about 40 kids in class with 2 teachers. So we pair a math teacher with a building trades instructor and we team teach. It's not, I do my thing for an hour, he does his thing for an hour. I lead for 1 hour and he helps out and then we switch roles. And we've been doing this enough now that I am super confident in the building. My math instructor partner is doing a really good job with the math. So it's, you know, you might be like, holy, 40 kids in a class. It doesn't feel like it. We also have a student mentor, which we've done this long enough now that we have former GIC kids come back to be mentors, which is an awesome dynamic in the classroom. But the whole premise is we're a workforce. You know, we're getting you ready for the real world of work. We treat you like that. Your math relates to everything we're going to do in the shop. There is no like, when am I ever going to need this? You're going to need it next hour, because if you don't, you're going to let your team down and then they're not going to be very happy with you and you're not going to get your work done and you're going to be behind. And it's all in the context of building trades. I also teach, I'm just going to say real quick, AMPed, it's algebra and manufacturing. We just started that this year, but it's the same thing, but linking algebra to manufacturing. Manufacturing is very step-by-step. Algebra is very step-by-step. And our administrators saw how well geometry and construction was working for our students. So they let me do this. And they also had me, I'm actually making the program myself is our Algebra 2 for the trades, and that's for juniors and seniors that need an Algebra 2 credit. And that's a little more wide open. Our different units line up with different areas in the trades. It's not so focused on just building trades or manufacturing, but it's that same kind of enthusiasm. And we aim this for all students. We've got high flyers, we've got kids that have been in special ed in the past, and we've got a lot of average Joes. And that's what makes our class work well.
Okay, great. So there's a lot there to unpack a little bit. So I'm going to talk at the high level and you can break it down for us a little bit. And then, by the way, for those who are watching, if you have questions at any point, put them in the chat room. And even if you are saving some for later, because I do want, if you have a question and you're just a verbal person, you need to share it out loud, we'll have some time for that. But please, as you think of things, make sure you put in the chat room. We'll talk about a couple things, but we want to address any questions. So back to the high level here. You teach math and you have a partner who's a construction trades, and now basically you're working in tandem to do geometry and construction at the same time. So what that looks like is maybe one day you spend 2 hours doing math and the next day you're 2 hours doing, or is it 1 hour, even though you're the math teacher and you have a construction trades helping you because you're on a block schedule? Is it 1 hour and 1 hour? Is it 2 hours one day and 2 hours the next? To help us understand that a little bit.
We try to do 1 hour and 1 hour, and we've tried it both ways. We've tried it for a while doing, all math on Monday, all in the shop on Tuesday. But it seems to gel with the kids a whole lot better when, if we're talking about trigonometry in the classroom, that 10 minutes later go down to the shop and they're having to figure out angles and they're using that trig right there rather than day to day.
Got it. Okay, so then you do have them put some application to it right away. So, and you mentioned a couple of other things. So the kids are actually learning the math and they're literally going down to the construction trades room, to the shop class, and starting to do. So I've got a bazillion questions. The first one, what about the kids who don't know, I'm just now in my 40s learning how to do some construction stuff. I wish I'd learned when I was younger, but what about these kids who they've never picked up a hammer before?
We start our first day, after we go over some basic safety stuff, we go over like how to pound a nail. Like the first thing we do is pounding nails. If you guys are interested in checking this out, we're on Facebook. It's just Sue High Geometry and Construction. And we put up a video this year. It sounds like you're living in a woodpecker's den. I don't know if woodpeckers have dens, but it's 40 kids pounding nails. And that's where we start. We assume they know nothing. And it's actually almost better if they do know nothing, because our kids that have bad habits, those are the ones we would just worry about chopping their fingers off.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we don't want to see any of that though. You haven't had any chopping the fingers yet, have you?
No, nope, none. Knock on wood.
All right, so we've got this idea of learning math and then going and applying it right away. And I was explaining to Becky before we got started, I loved math. I was actually pretty good at it, algebra, pre-algebra, but then I hit geometry. I don't know if there's anybody else in here like this. You hit geometry and then all of a sudden, your passion for math just disappeared. I don't know what it is for some, it's a totally different method, right? So, and we know too, kids struggle, especially when they get to algebra and they get to geometry. What is it about geometry construction? You talked about, you even have kids who are special ed doing this. What is it about that do you think has helped them become more successful? We haven't even talked about grades and scores yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is our environment. And we live by the philosophy that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So we spend our first week of school is 4 days. We might just get into math on the fourth day. We do a ton of team building, a ton of learning how to communicate. We take the colors personality test. I'm an orange. I am bold and impulsive. And I put that right out there. And we have other students, so they understand if he's a blue, he's probably going to let me take the lead and hang back. So we put a lot into knowing how to communicate. Group work is awesome if you know how to work in a group, so we put a lot into that. And just our climate is we run as a unit. I don't care what you can do. What can you and your team do? Okay. We do a lot of competitive games throughout the year where it doesn't matter who wins, just don't be last. And so cool. we build that.
All right, cool.
Going in.
So here's the thing. So you're doing math and then you're going to construction, to the lab to start building. What So tell us first, what is it that you guys build? Are you just generically building, like you said, woodpecker? Are you building a bird feeder, or what are you like working towards building, or does that matter?
Um, every school is different, like what their approach is. Like someday I would love us to build a tiny home. Like that's my ultimate dream. But we always start out the year with learning how to do wall layout. So the kids build half walls, so it's like a 3 foot or 4 foot high wall, but the studs are where they need to be. They're to code, they're 16 on center. We know how to put windows in with headers and trimmers. We usually build stair stringers, but that's expensive using that lumber. So we just cut them out of, we rip OSB and cut them out of OSB. And usually about this time of year, I mean, depending on how good our kids are doing, we've built dog houses in the past. We've built chicken coops. We're building greenhouses this year. We've built a ton of sheds and playhouses. That's
Cool.
mostly where we're at.
And I have heard that some schools have done that, like where they had a place close enough where they were doing a Habitat for Humanity home. So that's what you said, a tiny home or something. So
Yep.
the sheds and the dog houses and stuff, what do you do with those? Is that an opportunity to kind of use that with the community, or?
It is, and that's the sheds are awesome. Because our building centers, we've got one in Pickford that's about a half hour from the Sioux, and a couple in the Sioux Builders, Lock City. They give us the materials for free. Um, we're free labor. We build them their sheds, and actually they've never. The idea is we give them back to them, and they can sell them, but they've never had to sell one because we have them sold before they're built. We built one a couple years ago for our like the Humane Society, for animals. And the kids painted a great big cartoon dog on the front and a tail on the back and paw prints along the side. And like it was a hit. It was all over Facebook, all over Sault Ste. Marie. This awesome shed that they built that looks like a dog.
So, and that's one of the things I try to pitch, and we'll get more into the data in a second here. But when I try to preach this, I've talked about, I say rigor and relevance, and this is my take on it. But for too long, it seems like K-12 education as a whole really focuses on the rigor and sometimes forgets that the relevance component.
Yep.
And what I see is that you're able to meet the rigor, which we'll talk about. There's a lot of relevance for these kids because it makes connections. So they're not only learning math, they're learning a trade for some of these kids who have never picked up a hammer before,
Yep.
but they're also able to somehow see how this all ties back to community. So I think, and when you talk about doing true colors and other things, your kids are learning about these soft skills as well. Like they're really putting that into action.
Yeah, and soft skills are a big one because if you can't communicate or you're a jerk, we call it group therapy because you and your group better get it together, and we'll talk them through that. But you don't get to not work with someone if you don't like them. And the kids will come to us too with community connections. We've built outhouses for people's sugar shacks, for making maple syrup in the spring,
Okay.
or for their church, or different things. That it's nice to see the kids taking the lead on that. And when we do have to talk to people in the community, I make the kids do it. If we're looking for donations, our Sherwin-Williams store has been awesome as far as helping us out. The kids are calling and talking to them. It's not us adults.
Awesome. Well, and I want to make sure we have time for some questions. So I want to get into some of the nitty gritty. First things, let's get into the data. This is a great idea, and I'm sure some educators are saying, this sounds cool, really neat, but if I don't have data to back it up, then it's going to be a hard sell. So you said when you first, I know we talked before, and you said when you first started the program, you were very specific. You went to your administration and said, I want some low level achievers, I want some high level, and I want a mix. I wanted to get a blend of what a real class would look like. And so what did that look like in terms of scores and how the students did and how they're being assessed in comparison to the rest of the school?
Our aim every year is, first of all, to have a 50-50 ratio, male to female. And some years we hit it and some years we don't. We also would like to have about 10% high achievers, 10% low achievers, and everybody else is just pretty average, anywhere across the spectrum. And our scores have been fabulous. We take the NWEA MAP test, 3 times a year. And we've beat all of the geometry classes, regular geometry and honors geometry in growth every year. Our achievement level, it's increased every year. It helps. I know what I'm doing a little bit more every year. But we smoke regular geometry. It's not even close. And the majority of our kids would be in either regular geometry or in our co-taught geometry class. which has special ed assistants. But our achievement levels we are at the higher end of grade level as a whole every year. And that's what sells it to our administrators, because off the get-go, even our administrators were telling people that this is for low achievers, or this is for hands-on, or it's in the shop, so it's for those kids. Like, it's not. We've got our engineers here. One of my favorites, he was in our first year, and every day he's like, "Are you sure you're preparing me for the future?" And every day I was like, "I have no idea. I've never done this before." And he was one of our star scholarship recipients. Like, he's good through his PhD. He's a senior at Michigan State now. And that's, and I kept tabs, like, am I getting you what you need? Like, what do I need to tweak? And he's like, no, when I got to pre-calc, said the kids that hadn't taken geometry and construction, when they got to the hard stuff, they just quit. So there's a handful of them that had been in geometry and construction that were in pre-calc. And he's like, we know how to solve problems. If we don't know what it is, we know where our resources are. We know to approach it from different angles. And that's been consistent. I just talked to one of my other students. She's the only one to ever get 100% on our final exam. And she's in pre-calc this year. And she's like, yeah, I'm totally kicking butt in that class because I had GIC and it totally makes sense. And I remember what I learned. And that's the other thing with it being hands-on. They remember what they do. And it's not just the smart kids. I ran into a couple of my boys that would ditch to go to lunch every day and then park behind the shop. And as seniors, I'm like, boys, how are you doing in algebra 2? And they're like, oh, we've got A's. And I'm like, no, you don't. And they're like, no, we do. We remember what you taught us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So, all right. So because they retain it because there's practical application to that.
Mhm.
All right. So now I had another question behaviorally. So you got the kids who are, all right, what does it do with behavior? Because a lot of times some teachers have great content, but they struggle with classroom management. And there's a whole lot of things you have to be able to let go of.
Mhm.
How does that happen with the kids? Like, do they embrace this, as well as how does that go down? Do you have to deal with a lot of discipline because there's a lot of moving parts?
Discipline is not an issue. I mean, we know how to deal with it better. Our first year, there's a couple jerks in class, and we address that right off the get-go. If you're going to be a jerk, if you're going to be sexist to the girls, we had a boy that would walk by people and hit them with sandpaper on their arm. Like, you're just not going to be in class. And that's it. And this is a privilege. We have a waiting list every year to get into our class. So kids know that it's a privilege to be in geometry and construction. And we don't have behavior issues. I had one of my favorite students of all time last year, and he is hell on wheels. Holy mackerel. But he was awesome for us. And he earned an A. He had a 20% in Algebra 1 as a freshman and got an A in geometry and construction because it was relevant. He felt valued. He was part of a team. He finally had someplace to belong. And that's,
that was what I was going to say. What about those kids who maybe traditionally have not done as well in school, particularly in math, but even in other subjects they find, or the kids who maybe just their learning style is a little bit different because this is hands-on, that really grabs them, huh?
It does. And we have so much fun. I mean, we don't sit at our desks. We're going and doing, and the math lessons, there's some, I just taught trigonometry. Like, you guys are going to have to sit here for an hour and I'm going to, these are the nuts and bolts of trigonometry. But then we're going to go have a scavenger hunt, around the school, and you have to use trig to find your angle and your distance, to earn your Snickers bar at the end. And there's no quitting. Like, you can't just say, like, we give up. Like, everybody's going to get a Snickers bar and like it because you're going to get it done.
Well, and like you talked about, like these other students are teaching them grit and these, again, other life skills. Okay, just a couple more questions and I want to turn it over to anybody else. I haven't seen anything in the chat room, so I'm assuming and hoping that they're just waiting, chomping at the bit, but because nothing's been in the chat room. So if you've got questions, please enter them in there. But my questions to you are school board and parents. What kind of reception have you had among school board and parents now that you've been doing it for a couple of years versus maybe even at the beginning?
They love it. And it's really funny because, we live in a small town, compared to where y'all are in Grand Rapids. But I see my school board members at the grocery store, and we've presented after our first year and our third year, we presented how our kids have been doing with their test scores and, what we had found to the school board. And they're like, hey, love what you're doing. Keep it up. And that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
And our spring conferences is interesting because I'll have parents that have kids that could be, they'll be applying to be in geometry and construction, and they'll stop, even though I don't have their kid in class, but they'll stop at conferences and be like, so Susie would do really well in your class. She wants to be an engineer and we think that'd be best.
Well, that's good. That's
Yeah, I
good.
might need to put out a tip jar. That might be
Yeah, that's it. That's it. All right. So I've got one or two more questions. And then again, I want to turn it over. Important, because this is something that I've heard from a lot of teachers. A lot of teachers struggle, and you probably heard this before, and maybe you even said it if you admit it. Like I remember one back in the day, one of my favorite phrases was, "That's just one more thing." And sometimes, that one more thing that administration's asking you to do, just one more thing, and you feel like, how am I going to fit this into my curriculum? This doesn't sound like just one more thing. But the other thing I hear teachers say is, yeah, but how am I going to fit it in with my standards? I've got the strict standards. Are you able to meet most or all of your standards that you have set goals for through your program and still be able to do this?
We do. We hit definitely the power standards. That's for sure. I think there's 12 units in geometry and construction. There's 8 in geometry and construction. There's 12 in AMP. We've only made it through 5 ever. But the last 2.5 are fluff, really. I mean, those are like, man, if you need some bonus, there you are. A lot of the pushback I would get from maybe people who are more traditional thinking is, well, you don't teach proofs. It's geometry. Why don't you teach proofs? Because we have to prove everything we do. Like the proof is if the building is standing.
Action, right?
But as far as, and me personally as an educator, like I'm not hung up on standards. I'm hung up on our kids learning. Like I'm not going to keep trucking through standards if you haven't got the first 3 I taught you.
Mm-hmm.
And our test scores show that we're doing just fine with that.
Well, and I want to make sure there's time for questions. I would love to hear a little bit more about AMPed as well, but if there's people, I haven't seen any questions in the chat room. So if you have questions for the chat room, you can go ahead and put it. If you have a question that you'd like to just ask verbally, since I can only see Becky and myself, just go ahead and raise your hand on the via the whatever it is, the participant thing. So if you have questions, until I see a question, what I'll do this, I'll pause for 5 seconds. And if somebody's got a question, here's a chance to jump in. So I'll wait, give a good long 5 count.
I've taught, the question is, how many years has she taught this? This is my 6th year teaching geometry and construction.
Great. Anybody else?
About how many students are in the class and how many students in the school. We aim for about 40 students in our class, and we've got about 800 students in grades 9 through 12.
So about 200 per grade level?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Yeah, and Tracy said, "Creep up the great work. How nice it is to see such positive things."
Thank
Ron
you.
Has a question. Ron has a question. How many teachers have come to observe, and how many have taken it back to start their own program? Great question.
Gosh, we've probably had at least a dozen teachers from around the region come to observe. We've had teachers from all over the state, from the Grand Rapids area as far as way as the north side of Detroit, call me and ask, kind of Ron and Eric, like you did, and I talked your ears off about it. It's a hard sell because, yeah, when you say, why don't you try this? Yeah, if somebody tells me right now to try something new, I'd like, my plate's full, and it's just a change of gears. It's not, well, I'm going to add a story problem to my lesson every day. It's completely changing how you're doing things, and it's a full commitment. I think it's worth it. Like, I'm having more fun teaching this way than I ever have teaching traditionally.
Okay, be honest. Were you a little bit, you said you drank the Kool-Aid because you went to a conference, but until you do it, were you about like, I hope this works? And were you a little fearful that it might not work? Or based on what you saw, like, no, this is going to be a no-brainer because you had to shift the way you were teaching.
Yeah, I was really hoping that it was working. I was having a blast. I was learning a ton of building trade stuff. I was working with a great partner. He was super enthusiastic about what we were doing. And I mean, I've been doing this long enough, you can tell when a kid's learning and when they're not. The kids were engaged. I've had to, wake up zillions of students, falling asleep in class, learning math, and nobody falls asleep in geometry and construction because you'd miss something, and you don't want to miss anything.
Because you got to apply it in just a few minutes, right?
Yeah. Yep. And we move fast. And we joke around, we have a good time. If you're being a dipstick, we're going to call you on it. Yeah, but it was one of those things that once we got rolling, we saw how good it was. and we had to tweak it. I mean, it was not perfect, you know, and it's still not. It's always a work in progress. Um, but it's good. And that's you know, I think our first year we made the kids partners with us. I told them, like, if this is going to get better, you guys have to help. You're guinea pigs. And they were fantastic about that. And I think giving them that ownership it was really big. And we try to do that, you know, that we make t-shirts every year, geometry and construction t-shirts, and you don't get it till May because you've got to make it all the way through to get your t-shirt. And one year I offered them up to if any staff wanted to buy one. And one of our history teachers was wearing one, and like 6 kids came to class. They're like, what the heck? Mr. Anderson's got one of our t-shirts. He's not in our class. Like, oh, we are family. We are.
All right, that's good. Ron says such a great example of bringing the joy back in education for staff and students. And I agree, like every time I talk to you, like you're pumped about it, like you enjoy what you're doing. And I know every teacher for the most part does feel that way, but sometimes it just feels like, let's be honest, it can be a drain at times. It's challenging, it's a lot of work, but being able to get out there and do stuff. And I will, again, shared at the beginning, I'm in my 40s and I'm just now like gathered enough equipment where I'm wanting to learn to do some construction stuff at home. And I'll admit it's sometimes a challenge and I feel a little overwhelmed. And I keep thinking my father-in-law would be so disappointed because he's so good at it. But I'm like, well, now it's better late than never. What I love is these kids are not only learning math, and they're not only learning, you know, how the context so it sticks with them, but they're also learning really practical skills. What have you heard from the kids about that? Like, do kids come back and say, "Oh, I'm so glad I learned how to do that"? Particularly the women.
Yes, we have our girls are some of our best builders for sure. And we have kids since we've done this. Had kids go into the building trades. I mean, we're fortunate up here, Northern Michigan University. You can get a 1, 2, or 4-year degree in building trades management. We've had kids go through that. And one of our students, my husband's cousin, he builds $1 million homes up here. And I have a former student that works for him. And he came back last year to talk to our students. And he's like, I even work on Sundays. I just love this. I love what I learned here. I love my job. And he's making more money than I am right now. And the kid's 19. And he's doing great. You know, he's going to own his own company someday. No doubt he's going to take over the world. But they get passionate about it. I've had contractors in the area like, who are your kids going to this summer? Like, do you got any good ones for me? You know, I mean, they can get summer jobs right out of the gate.
That's another great way, obviously, absolutely, for kids to get skills and opportunities for employment this summer. Well, we do got a few more questions in here. Tracy says, are there the same kids for the entire 2-hour block for the entire year? It sounds like, right? The same kids for the whole time, full year-long class.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And Diane asks, have any of your students participated in an apprenticeship program after they graduated?
Some of them have gone right to the workforce, working for contractors, and some have actually gone up to take Northern's program, as far as I know.
Cool. Kevin mentions, he said 2 other schools in their region have started GIC programs in the past 2 years after seeing the program that you built, Becky. So that's cool. So your examples really open doors for other people. And since Ron is on here, Ron, that means I'm going to have to, I've been saying that I wanted to do a road trip for a while now. Obviously not right now in January is probably when I would do it, but I definitely want to do a road trip to come up and see what it looks like in action. But I'd really love to bring some other math teachers. Would you be open sometime to, I don't know, do you ever record sessions so that people can see what it looks like, or?
I've never done that. I'm sure we could do it. That'd be a good challenge. Maybe I'll put that on my list of things to do. But seriously, if anybody wants to come up, I mean, we're having the mildest winter in history right now. Or spring's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like your winter down there.
Right.
Come on up. Our door's always open and we're welcome to show off what our kids can do.
Okay, well, I've just been having so much fun that I forgot I had a couple more slides. So I'm going to wrap it up really quick. I'm going to do this fast. Sorry, everybody. I've just been enjoying it too much. But let me just go ahead quickly and share my screen because I've got to give you the information you need so that you can go ahead and get your sketches. So I'm going to share my screen again, screen 2 here. And I got to put this back to full PowerPoint. Can you see my screen again?
Yep.
Okay. So for everybody who's been following along, thank you. Becky, you want to say thank you so much for your time. That time just flew, really enjoyed it. Again, here's her email address up on the screen, barbic@eupschools.org, if you're interested in following up with her, or you can reach out to me. I'll give my email address. Upcoming PDs on February 18, we have Nancy Hoffman from Northview High School. She's an ELA teacher, and she's going to talk about mock interviews or practice interviews and what that looks like and what she's done in her classroom. I've helped her with that before. It's phenomenal. On March 8th, we have Bill Van Dyke. He's over at North Point Christian, and he's the director of Big Picture Learning. So any of you out there who are interested in looking at how do we build well, like Diane had mentioned about like apprenticeships that for students who are still in school, apprenticeship program or internship programs for kids in high school. That's what they do with Big Picture Learning. We have upcoming educators and industry programs on February 25th. We have Blue Flame Thinking, a marketing company we'll be working with. And then on March 23rd, we'll be Being Garter, an accounting and finance company here in town. We still have the West Michigan Career Readiness Conference. Last week, we had our first session. On Wednesday, we have our second, and then we have ones following up on February 3rd and February 10th. I'll be facilitating on February 3rd. Those are from 4 to 5. Those are free to sign up for, and you can find them on Eventbrite. And there's different topics each week around career readiness. On 2 weeks from now, I will be doing, no, actually next week, sorry, February 3rd, I'll be doing something around employability skills. And did want to mention, we have a program called Design Thinking. That's going to be called the Design Thinking Academy. We've done it in the past, and we're going to be bringing it back. So if you know of any teachers, this is first and foremost for people in the Grand Rapids area, the Kent County area. If we still have spots left open, we'd be open to taking other people, but it will be a virtual training on teaching people the design thinking process and how to apply it in the classroom. So that's starting on February 16th. You can find that in our PD Hub. Really important. I'm already got every slot filled for this year, but I'm looking for next year now. I'm already looking ahead. If you know of somebody or you are willing to just share your story and what you're doing around career readiness. I mean, Becky had a lot of things to say. Like these are skills that kids can take and use in the real world. They're learning them now. If you're doing something that you're willing to share, or you want to nominate somebody else to be one of our guests, I would love it. So please reach out to me at bit.ly/spotlight guest. That's bit.ly/spotlight guest. I haven't had anybody bite yet, but I'm hoping I will get somebody. And the thing that you were looking for in order to get your sketch for today, again, it's about 30. Today we went about 35 minutes, but you will still get a half sketch if you go to bit.ly/ESS-sketch. That's bit.ly/ESS-sketch. And I'll put that in the chat in just a second here. You need this 6-digit code in order to fill out the survey though. It's 329-584. Again, I'll repeat it. It's 329-584. You need that 6-digit code in order to complete the survey, and completing the survey will help ensure that you get the sketch. Just want to thank everybody for attending. Again, you can find out more information at our website, careerreadiness.kentisd.org. And my email address is eric.kelleher@kentisd.org. And I will put in the chat here the link to that. Oops, let me get out of there. I'll put in the link to the chat here, anything you need for that. So in terms of, I've just lost it here. Oh, there it is. So I can get you the sketch link and the code. But if there's nothing else, you're free to go. If you have any final questions, I'll stick around for a minute. I know you've got about 2 or 3 more minutes left, Becky, yourself, but if you have any questions, I'll take them and I can make sure I pass them along to her. So with that, we want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you, Becky, so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Awesome. I'm going to get out of here, Eric. I'm going to time a swim meet.
I know you got to go. Thanks so
All
much.
right. Thank you, guys.